Hey guys, so in this video, I'm going to go over an essay from a student in this class. I chose this essay to make this video for you guys because the essay is very strong. It's a great example of a successful literacy narrative, but of course there's always room for improvement. So I'm just going to kind of go through the essay, talk about what's working, talk about places where there could be improvement and whatnot. So first of all, format is almost perfect MLA format. We have the student's name here, instructor, the class, and then the date. We have a title. The only thing missing is page numbers. So you would just title this page 1, since your name is here. And then going down, you would do last name 2, last name 3, and so on and so forth. So again, double-spaced, 12-point font, Times New Roman. These all meet with the guidelines of writing an MLA formatted paper. So first thing I want to talk about, what I really like about this essay already is that we have a title, right? And if you do title it a literacy narrative, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to give you a bad grade for that at all. But it's nice to title your pieces. It's nice for the reader to kind of get a sense of what this essay might be about. So we have here 1,000,000 words I didn't know I needed. Okay, so of course, automatically I think of 1,000,000-word readers in school. We had that when I was in elementary school, so I'm thinking it might be about that. And also I can tell it's going to focus more on the reading aspect in regards to literacy. So great title. It gets us focused on what the essay might be about. Okay. So then I'm just going to go paragraph by paragraph. This is the introduction. And here I've highlighted, we haven't really talked about a thesis statement yet. We will talk more about that for our next papers, because that's what your next papers will be. They'll really need a thesis statement, but this is a narrative. So there still is a thesis, but it's not as critical to the paper. But this is the writer's thesis. So we have my friends who know me now probably think I have always been the bookworm that I am. This actually couldn't be further than the truth. I hated reading at the beginning of elementary school. There was nothing I liked about it. It was hard to concentrate, and I felt like I was just staring at words on a page to make sense of them. That was until I had a reason to force myself into it. So we kind of get an idea of where the essay is headed, the direction it's headed in. So this would be considered a thesis statement. This tells us the situation and the conflict, and then the possible resolution that we'll get to by the end of the essay. So these sentences tell the reader what the story is going to be about. The intro is clear and concise, but here is where there's room for improvement. There's room to expand here. Look how, and again, your paragraphs, you don't have to have a certain amount of sentences. A paragraph is just a complete thought, but this is a little small, as in there's room to expand. Maybe give a little more. Why do they think you're a bookworm? These are just suggestions for revision. Maybe give more on why your friends think you're a bookworm now, instead of just this one sentence. So when we get to that moment, when you let your reader know that you used to hate reading, there will be more of a conflict. The conflict will be more obvious to the narrative, and it will help push the narrative forward. And one that we already know will be resolved because you included that here too. So this is a good intro, clear, concise, sets the reader up, but you could probably add a few more things here. You don't have to give all the details in the first paragraph, but just maybe a little more for the reader to sort of get them situated in the narrative. So here we know when I was in the 3rd grade, I found my best friends, Elena and Devani. And so we have some characters being introduced, which is good because they're in the whole narrative. So the writer is consistent, and these two are going to play a big role in the writer's development or history experiences with literacy, right? So here I've highlighted in this section, there are some really good details, and the writer provides a specific memory for the reader, and that adds to the narrative arc. So instead of just generalizing, the writer gives a specific memory, a detail that allows the reader to sort of be situated in the narrative. So, and the narrative continues from in this sort of like chronological order besides the intro. We start in 3rd grade, and it kind of continues up until present day for the writer. Talks about things that they did in school or that concern reading. Talking about how these two would get all kinds of awards and prizes, and how that sort of affected the reader at the time, or the writer at the time. So here we also have, this is just, the writer does a great job of providing details and descriptions. Right here we have the crisp, fresh morning air around us and the sun peeking out of the clouds. And these this is a good way to use details and descriptions in your narrative. It's just enough, but not too much. So the descriptions don't take us away from the narrative. We're still focusing on the scene that the writer sets up. But it just adds to the narrative. It provides the reader scenery. And excuse my misspell right here, as it situates the reader in the writer's narrative. And we have this clear sense of where the writer is, which is nice. It grounds us a little bit. It gives us enough understanding to keep up with the narrative. Okay. So the narrative keeps going, and here near to the end of the narrative, this is the moment where the writer decides to make a change. This is where we reach the peak of the narrative. So here's all this conflict, and here finally the writer decides to make a change, and this is the moment there is attempted resolve for the narrative. So now we know what to expect. We're going to see the reader get closer and closer to the resolution, to the significance of the narrative. And then in the next paragraph, the writer then gives a step-by-step process of how the writer is going to resolve this conflict. So it takes the reader there, never leaves the reader questioning what's happening. It provides just enough detail. And also specific books and specific characters and whatnot. Again, it just provides the reader enough detail to really know what's going on with this situation. So in the narrative, the writer talks about how she wants to keep up with the friends, right? So the writer forces themselves into reading to try to keep up, to possibly also be up there as a 1,000,000-word reader with her friends. And here we have this nice moment of the writer was not successful in reaching those 1,000,000 words by the end of 5th grade. And of course there's disappointment, but there is a sort of light at the end of the tunnel, because the writer, instead of giving up, decided to keep reading. So she can sort of keep the relationship she has with the friends, right? So the writer still decides to push herself with reading, even though she didn't make that 1,000,000-word count. And then just more details about that situation. So then by the end, this last paragraph, the conclusion's very strong conclusion, because here the writer is clear on giving the reader the significance of the narrative, the purpose. And here it is: for as much as I was determined to read 1,000,000 words, it hadn't dawned on me that I had stopped thinking about word count and instead fell in love with reading itself. And how the friends would never believe she didn't like to read at all, because she never made that aware to them. She just pushed herself. This was like a personal conflict. And now the writer has ended up loving to read, even though they failed at this one thing they were trying to do, which is the million words. But now that doesn't even matter anymore because the writer fell in love with reading. So this is just a very, very strong conclusion. It wraps up the narrative. And then it gives the reader the significance. So here I told you all of this, and this is the meaning out of my story. We have reached the resolution, the resolve. So yeah, this is, and sorry, I got a little distracted. So this is a very, very strong narrative. Of course, there's room for some improvement. My main suggestion for revision would just to add a little more here in the intro to really sort of get us going into this very well told story of the history of literacy with this person. Very clear, uses good details, specific memories that never distract us away from the story. And the format is perfect. The title is nice. This is a strong narrative. So when you guys are revising your papers, keep these things in mind. Giving us enough in the introduction, providing enough details and memories and even descriptions like this, the crisp, fresh morning air, like those things will help push your narrative forward. And then just making sure that you never leave the reader questioning. And then, of course, in your conclusion, giving us the significance of this narrative if it wasn't made before, making sure that the reader knows, here's the meaning of my story, this is the significance, this is the purpose of me writing this one specific story. So yeah, keep that in mind, and also look at the other essays, and when you're doing your peer reviews, hopefully you're taking away stuff from your fellow peers, and you'll keep these things in mind during the revision process before turning in your final draft. Thanks, guys.